The time is at hand.
The elusive dog-like creature attacks livestock, bleeding them dry of blood.
8 to 10 feet tall, shadowy aliens.
But I am telling you right now,
we need a great reset.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Hello and howdy. Welcome to In Dark Places. I'm your Huckleberry, Junebug Fugit. Did you get to see the Northern Lights? I did not, but I think we're going to get another chance at it, according to some news reports. My question is, why is this happening? They're blaming it on the sunspots, but there's been sunspots for, I guess, a few years now. Why has this never happened before? And they're seeing the Northern Lights as far south as Australia. I don't know. The land down under is seeing the Northern Lights. I guess since it's the sunspots, it must be climate change on the sun, huh? I'm of the theory that it's probably HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program up in Alaska. These guys have been messing with the ionosphere ever since the 90s. Heating up things that don't need to be heated up, and trying to just basically play God by creating weather. They're probably messing with the magnetic field as well, and making these artificial northern lights. They're not the real northern lights. And hey, speaking of lights, can we make those LED light bulbs go away now, please? I hate those things. And all the street lights are LED now in my neighborhood. And it's driving the birds crazy. There's birds singing at 3 a.m. every night. They think it's daytime because of those stupid lights. This week's topic was suggested by Executive in Charge, Paul Chadwick. Thank you, Paul. If you have a topic suggestion, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. The Deep, Dark Secrets of the Vatican. I think those guys are kind of the wolves in sheep's clothing. Heard some bad things. Vatican moves to adapt to hoaxes, internet, and overhauls its process for evaluating visions of Mary by Nicole Winfield. Thanks, Nicole. The Vatican on Friday overhauled its process for evaluating alleged visions of the Virgin Mary, weeping statues, and other seemingly supernatural phenomena that have marked church history, putting the brakes on making definitive declarations, unless the event is obviously fabricated. The Vatican's Doctrine Office revised norms first issued in 1978, arguing that they were no longer useful or viable in the internet age. Nowadays, word about apparitions and weeping Madonnas travels quickly and can harm the faithful if hoaxers are trying to make money off people's beliefs or manipulate them, the Vatican said. The new norms make clear that such abuse of people's faith can be punishable, canonically saying,
the use of purported supernatural experiences or recognized mystical elements as a means of a pretext for exerting control over people or carrying out abuses is to be considered of particular moral gravity.
That guy's just trying to keep his identity concealed, I guess. The Catholic Church has a long and controversial history of the faithful claiming to have had visions of the Virgin Mary, of statues purportedly weeping tears of blood, and stigmata erupting on hands and feet mimicking the wounds of Christ. When confirmed as authentic by church authorities, these otherwise inexplicable signs have led to a flourishing of the faith, with new religious vocations and conversations. This has been the case for the purported apparitions of Mary that turned Fatima, Portugal, and Lourdes, France, into enormously popular pilgrimage destinations. Church figures who claim to have experienced the stigmata wounds, including Padre Pio and Pope Francis, have inspired millions of Catholics, even if decisions about their authenticity have been elusive. Francis himself has weighed in on the phenomenon, making clear that he is devoted to the main church-approved Marian apparitions, such as Our Lady of Guadalupe, who, believers say, appeared to an indigenous man in Mexico in 1531. But Francis has expressed skepticism about more recent events, including claims of repeated messages from Mary to seers at the shrine of Medjugorje in Bosnia, even while allowing pilgrimages to take place there. I prefer the Madonna as mother, our mother, and not a woman who's the head of a telegraphic office who sends a message every day at a certain time, Francis told reporters in 2017. The new norms reframe the Catholic Church's evaluation process by essentially taking off the table whether church authorities will declare a particular vision, stigmata, or other seemingly divinely inspired event supernatural. Instead, the new criteria envisages 6 main outcomes, with the most favorable being that the Church issues a non-committal doctrinal green light, a so-called nihil obstat. Such a declaration means that there is nothing about the event that is contrary to the faith, and therefore Catholics can express devotion to it. To date, fewer than 20 apparitions have been approved by the Vatican over its 2,000-year history, according to Michael O'Neill, who runs the online apparition resource, The Miracle Hunter.
I'm going to start with just some stories about the Vatican. Vatican City is the smallest country in the world. Encircled by a 2-mile border with Italy, Vatican City is an independent city-state that covers just over 100 acres, making it 1/8 the size of New York's Central Park. Vatican City is governed as an absolute monarchy with the Pope as its head. The Vatican mints its own euros, prints its own stamps, issues passports and license plates. Did not know that. Operates media outlets and has its own flag and anthem. One government function it lacks: taxation. Museum admission fees, stamp and souvenir sales, and contributions generate the Vatican's revenue. Little editor's note here. I was remembering how the church was always asking for money and donations to help feed the poor and stuff. I'm like, they got streets of gold. You think they have a little bit of money to share? Sorry. St. Peter's Basilica sits atop a city of the dead, including its namesake's tomb. A Roman necropolis stood on Vatican Hill in pagan times, when a great fire leveled much of Rome in AD 64. Emperor Nero, seeking to shift blame from himself, accused the Christians of starting the blaze. He executed them by burning them at the stake, tearing them apart with wild beasts, and crucifying them. Among those crucified was St. Peter, disciple of Jesus Christ, leader of the apostles and the first bishop of Rome, who was supposedly buried in a shallow grave on Vatican Hill. By the 4th century, in official recognition of the Christian religion in Rome, Emperor Constantine began the construction of the original basilica atop the ancient burial ground, which was believed to be the tomb of St. Peter at its center. The present basilica, built starting in the 1500s, sits over a maze of catacombs and St. Peter's suspected grave. Another little fun fact tidbit. For nearly 60 years in the 1800s and 1900s, popes refused to leave the Vatican. Popes ruled over a collection of sovereign papal states throughout central Italy until the country was unified in 1870. The new secular government had seized all the land of the papal states, with the exception of the small patch of the Vatican, and a Cold War of sorts then broke out between the Church and the Italian government. Popes refused to recognize the authority of the Kingdom of Italy, and the Vatican remained beyond Italian national control. Pope Pius IX proclaimed himself a prisoner of the Vatican, and for almost 60 years, popes refused to leave the Vatican and submit to the authority of the Italian government. When Italian troops were present in St. Peter's Square, popes even refused to give blessings or appear from the balcony overlooking the public space. Benito Mussolini signed Vatican City into existence. The dispute between the Italian government and the Catholic Church ended in 1929 with the signing of the Lateran Pax, which allowed the Vatican to exist as its own sovereign state and compensated the Church $92 million, more than $1 billion in today's money, for the Papal States. The Vatican used the payment as seed money to regrow its coffers. Mussolini, the head of the Italian government, signed the treaty on behalf of King Victor Emmanuel III. How about this one? I did not know a lot of this stuff. Popes did not live in the Vatican until the 14th century. Even after the construction of the original St. Peter's Basilica, popes lived principally at the Lateran Palace across Rome. They even left the city altogether in 1309 when the papal court moved to Avignon, France, after King Philip IV arranged for a French cardinal to be elected pope. 7 popes, all French, removed from Avignon, and the papacy did not return to Rome until 1377, by which time the Lateran Palace had burned and the Vatican started to be used as a papal residence. Much repair work needed to be done, however, because the Vatican had fallen into such disrepair that wolves dug for bodies in the cemetery, and cows even wandered the basilica. The Swiss Guard was hired as a mercenary force. The Swiss Guard, recognizable by its armor and colorful Renaissance-era uniforms, has been protecting the pontiff since 1506. That's when Pope Julius II, following in the footsteps of many European courts of the time, hired one of the Swiss mercenary forces for his own personal protection. The Swiss Guard's role in Vatican City is strictly to protect the safety of the Pope. Although the world's smallest standing army appears to be strictly ceremonial, its soldiers are extensively trained and highly skilled marksmen, and yes, the force is entirely comprised of Swiss citizens. Also, several times during the Vatican's history, popes escaped through a secret passageway. I want a secret passageway. In 1277, a half-mile-long, elevated, covered passageway, the Passetto di Borgo, was constructed to link the Vatican with the fortified Castel Sant'Angelo on the banks of the Tiber River. It served as an escape route for popes, most notably in 1527, when it likely saved the life of Pope Clement VII during the sack of Rome. You know, all these things are written in Roman numerals, and I'm freaking nailing them so far. Thank you, In Dark Places listeners. As the forces of Holy Rome Emperor Charles V rampaged through the city and murdered priests and nuns, murder! It was murder, Charles! The Swiss Guard held back the enemy long enough to allow Clement to safely reach the Castle Sant'Angelo, although 147 of the Pope's forces lost their lives in the battle. How about this one? As of 2011, the number of people with Vatican citizenship totaled 594. That number included 71 cardinals, 109 members of the Swiss Guard, 51 members of the clergy, and 1 nun inside the Vatican walls. The largest group of citizens, however, was the 307 members of the clergy in diplomatic positions around the world. With Benedict XVI residing as a Pope Emeritus in the Vatican, the population will increase by 1 when a new Pope is named. And one little last tidbit here with some Vatican history. The Vatican Observatory owns a telescope in Arizona. As Rome expanded, light pollution from the city made it increasingly difficult for astronomers at the Vatican Observatory, located 15 miles from the city at the papal summer residence in Castel Gandolfo, to view the night skies. So in 1981, the observatory opened a second research center in Tucson, Arizona. That must be the Pope messaging me right now. The Vatican conducts astronomical research with a state-of-the-art telescope that sits atop Mount Graham in southeast Arizona. And you know what? I think there's some weird name for that telescope, and I'm going to go look that up right now.
The Vatican deals with thousands of paranormal cases a year. Some of those cases include legitimizing recent miracles in the Catholic Church or performing a full-fledged exorcism. Most Vatican paranormal investigations involve working with a team of doctors to determine whether paranormal phenomena has occurred. There are special committees formed and lots of training when the Catholic Church gets involved with paranormal activity. Miracles are overseen by the Congregation of the Causes of Saints. The Vatican has an Office of Congregation for the Causes of Saints responsible for investigating paranormal activity, i.e. miracles, involved in an application for sainthood. If proof of a miracle exists, the person who performed the miracle may get beatified. This is one of the first steps of becoming a saint, and is necessary for a miracle to be officially recognized by the Church. The Congregation for the Causes of Saints first evaluates a person's life. The path to the verification of a miracle isn't easy. The Congregation for the Causes of Saints evaluates whether a person who allegedly performed a miracle is virtuous enough to have performed a miracle before deciding whether a miracle has happened. Significant evidence that the individual in question was exceedingly holy, and people have been drawn to prayer through his or her example, must be present. If the congregation rules a person was indeed a servant of God, the case has passed to the Pope, who can beatify candidates for sainthood. After evaluation, the miracle must meet certain qualifications. It takes a bit more than a great moral compass to prove someone performed a miracle. For a miracle to be seriously considered by the Church, it must meet certain requirements. Miracles, such as the miraculous curing of a disease, must be instantaneous or sudden, complete, and permanent, and without scientific explanation. For example, you can't have miraculously cured cancer with the flick of a wrist, and for some good prayers, for it to come back in 5 years. All these qualifications must be proven, and the burden of finding proof falls on a team dedicated to research. There are two kinds of exorcisms, minor and major. Minor exorcisms don't have anything to do with demonic possession. Major exorcisms are what movies have trained the public to think upon hearing the word. Most purported demonic possessions aren't real. According to Father Lampert, an experienced exorcist who spoke to Catholic Online, true demonic possession is exceedingly rare. Only 1 in 5,000 cases is ruled full demonic possession. Mild encounters with paranormal entities are far more common. A demonic attachment, for instance, happens when a demon attaches itself to someone but doesn't take full possession. This can go unnoticed because the person to whom the demon attaches to only feels symptoms like sickness when near a holy place. There is no speaking in tongues. Demonic possession occurs when the influence of a demon causes the afflicted to feel depressed and drained from energy but isn't mentally depressed. The Vatican first rules out mental illness when investigating a demonic possession. The Vatican is just as strict about verifying demonic possession as it is about miracles. Every candidate for exorcism is thoroughly researched to prove the existence of demonic possession. In 1999, the Vatican revised guidelines for determining whether a person is demonically possessed or mentally ill. Now, priests are required to consult mental health professionals before performing exorcisms. Priests look for symptoms of genuine possession if doctors rule out mental illness. They look for specific systems of demonic possession, including speaking in foreign tongues previously unknown to purported victims of possession, and superhuman strength. Priests are taught to weed out real demonic possession by analyzing patient reactions. According to Father Capriano de Mayo, a priest who has been an exorcist since 1952, most people believe they're possessed are struggling with a completely different phenomena. Truly possessed individuals can be separated from the pack by their response to prolonged prayer sessions. Bishops must approve an exorcism before priests can proceed. The bishop examines the medical information provided along with the symptoms of the afflicted. If the bishop believes a person is truly possessed rather than mentally ill, he will grant permission to a priest to perform an exorcism. Exorcists are typically highly trained specialists. The Vatican requires exorcists to be highly trained because demonic possession is easy to fake and hard to ascertain as true. Certain priests have exploited alleged victims of possession. In other cases, unrecognized mental illness were mistaken for demonic possession, exacerbating the problem by keeping the victim away from medical assistance. Priests who become exorcists go through an apprentice-like process in which they work under an experienced exorcist. These experienced exorcists are granted permission to teach the bishops. Here are some theories about the Vatican's deep, dark secrets. The Vatican helped Nazi war criminals escape the Allied forces. After the victory of the Allied forces in Germany to end World War II, the Nazis were forced to seek refuge outside Europe. Thousands of Nazis managed to escape to South African countries, specifically Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. Harvard researcher Gerald Steinnacher wrote a book that shows travel documents pointing to the Vatican having helped those Nazis to travel to these countries. She argues that it was done with the hope of reviving European Christianity and fear of growing influence of the Soviet Union. The Vatican, however, has refused to comment on these claims. The Vatican made money from the Holocaust. In addition to aiding the escape of thousands of Nazis from Europe, the Vatican was also involved in helping smuggle Nazi-looted art, golf, and other property belonging to Jewish families. Gerald Posner, an American journalist, said that Bernardino Norgara, the financial advisor to the Vatican, is believed to have been one of the Nazi spies. He is believed to have instituted a horrifying scheme that allowed the Vatican to invest money in Italian insurance companies that kept the assets from the life insurance plans of the murdered Jewish families. Since the Vatican was an investor and not a direct insurer, they did not need to return any of the money made using the scheme. The Vatican Bank, also called the Institute for the Works of Religion, has been involved in numerous scandals. The most controversial is their dealing with Hitler. Gerald Posner, a historian, points out that the Vatican received church tax from Hitler every year. A substantial amount of money was paid to the IOR so that it cannot be tracked by Western banks. The IOR was used to store billions of dollars, the details of which have never been publicly revealed. The Apostolic Penitentiary is a secret tribunal that investigates so-called heinous crimes of individuals. It was supposedly founded in 1179 and was kept secret until 2009. Only the Pope can grant absolution to people brought to this tribunal. Examples of sins include attempting to assassinate the Pope, a priest exposing the sin or identity of a person who has confessed to them, and so on. The Pope acts as the head of this tribunal and is called the Major Penitentiary. and can either offer absolution or let the automatic excommunication stand. Rumors suggest that the Vatican holds proof of the existence of extraterrestrial life in the form of extraterrestrial skulls. Some sources say the archives contain proof that the Pope is conspiring extraterrestrial beings to implant everyone on Earth with computer chips. Some people believe that despite their dissolution in medieval times, the Illuminati has slowly built itself up, with its members placed in some of the most powerful positions across the world. One such powerful office is the Vatican, where many of its prominent members are believed to be part of the Illuminati. And this one will be my reason to go to the Vatican to investigate these theories myself. It is believed to be the home of a time machine, believed to have been built by an Italian scientist and priest, Father Pellegrino Maria Ernetti. The chronovisor is a device that apparently allows people to view the future and past. Although there is no record of such a device, some people believe it is hidden somewhere in the archives.
Let's talk about that Vatican telescope. Is there something satanic about the new telescope? Now, this is from 2015. The question is, please tell us why a telescope on Mount Graham, this is in Arizona, is being named Lucifer. Equating it to morning star seems to be a lame excuse. I don't mean to put words in your mouth on your note, as the case may be, but if you are suggesting that a telescope that is part of a project co-sponsored by the Vatican, Jesuits, and the University of Arizona has anything to do with Satan worship, I'm afraid you are misguided. But as I say, perhaps I read too much into your question. I'm pretty sure the Pope takes a dim view of Satan worship, and the University of Arizona isn't about to come out in favor of it. Lucifer stands for Large Binocular Telescope, Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. Now, they fit Lucifer neatly into all these big words. They could also just call it Libby, but they call it Lucifer. It's a pretty interesting piece of work. It operates at minus 351 degrees, which, for reasons that make my brain hurt, allows it to make near-infrared observations. This allows it to observe young galaxies that are very far away. Depending on who is doing the translation, Lucifer means morning star, or bearer of light, or shining one. The phrase occurs only once in Scripture, Isaiah 14:12. That is, the translation as Lucifer is taken from the Latin Vulgate. Next, why does the Vatican have a telescope and explore the skies? All right, there's a long answer to this. Why does the Vatican have telescopes? But here's a little short answer. It's very involved. Lots of research. But a simple answer is, the Church has had a long-standing interest in astronomy due to the astronomical basis of the calendar by which holy days and Easter are determined. So the reason the Vatican needs telescopes, one named Lucifer, is because of Easter. All right, Mr. Vatican.
I've loved this story since the first time I saw it on Unsolved Mysteries. In 1917, 3 shepherd children reported a series of private revelations from the Virgin Mary, in which she disclosed to them secrets that were confusing at the time, but were later borne out by world events. One of the visionaries, Lucia, wrote down what she saw and heard. The first secret was a vision of hell. Our Lady showed us a great sea of fire which seemed to be under the earth. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form, like transparent burning embers, all blackened and burnished bronze, floating about in the configuration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves, together with great clouds of smoke, now falling back on every side like sparks in a huge fire, without weight or equilibrium, and amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fear. The demons could be distinguished by their terrifying and repulsive likeness to frightful and unknown animals, all black and transparent. This vision lasted but an instant. Our Lady spoke to them and explained that devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary was a mean to save souls from going to hell. You have seen hell, where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved, and there will be peace. The second secret was World War I and II. The war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the pontificate of Pius XI. When you see a night illumined by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign you have been given by God, that He is about to punish the world for its crimes by means of war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and of the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, and a communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. Our Lady of Fatima then spoke about the errors of Russia, which many believe is a reference to communism. The path to peace is a special Marian consecration. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted, and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the Church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she shall be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. The third secret, penance and papal assassination attempt. Much apocalyptic imagery, including a vision of a pope who is shot. Pope John Paul II believed that this vision had much to do with his own experience, though the Virgin Mary never mentions specifics. According to the interpretation of the Little Shepherds, which was also confirmed recently by Sister Lucia, the bishop clothed in white, who prays for all the faithful, is the Pope. As he makes his way with great difficulty toward the cross amid the corpses of those who were martyred, bishops, priests, men and women, religious, and many lay people, he too falls to the ground, apparently dead, under a hail of gunfire. After the assassination attempt of May 13, 1981, it appeared evident that it was a mother's hand that guided the bullet's path, enabling the Pope in his throes to halt at the threshold of death. Another large part of this vision is penance, calling the world to come back to God. After the two parts which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand, flashing, but it gave out flames that looked as though that they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated toward him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance." As a note, while these visions are certainly startling and have captivated the world, they still fall under the category of private revelation, and are not part of the Church's public revelation. It is found in the Bible and interpreted in sacred tradition. Catholics are not required to give religious assent to believe anything that is private revelation, as they are required to give religious assent to the teachings of the Church. The first two visions from the Virgin Mary have come to pass, and the third secret has supposedly yet to happen. And Father Malachi Martin was on Art Bell's show several times, 8 times I think in all, and Art asked him if he knew what the third secret was, and Malachi Martin told him yeah. So Art was begging him to tell what the secret was, and Malachi Martin just kind of laughed and said, well, if I told you, I would be telling the whole world on this radio show, and it wouldn't really be a secret anymore. So he kind of refused to tell him on the air, but he did tell him off the air. So Art Bell knew the third secret, and he took it to his grave with him. And if you haven't heard already, check out those interviews with Malachi Martin on Art Bell's Coast to Coast. Those are so good.
And here's a little something from our friend Malachi Martin. From his book, Windswept House, a Vatican novel from 1996. The novel details turmoil within the Catholic Church and corruption in Vatican City. Malachi alleged the novel depicted real events in the form of a non-fiction novel, similar to the works of Taylor Caldwell, Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. The plot. Windswept House describes a satanic ritual, the enthronement of Lucifer, taking place at St. Paul's Chapel inside Vatican City on June 29, 1963. The book gives a depiction of high-ranking churchmen taking oaths signed with their own blood, plotting to destroy the church from within. It tells the story of an international organized attempt by these Vatican insiders and secular internationalists to force a pope of the Catholic Church to abdicate so that a successor may be chosen that will fundamentally change Orthodox faith and establish a new world order. Now, I was trying to find a couple quotes from Malachi Martin in his own voice to share with you, but I found this YouTube channel called Armor of God, Spiritual Warfare, and it talks for a couple minutes about Malachi Martin and the Vatican. And since on this video I can see a couple of my pictures that they must have swiped from Hostage to the Devil, I feel I can use a minute of their audio. So here you go.
So the topic of our discussion in this video will be about one of the most controversial priests of the 20th century, Father Malachi Martin, who claimed that Satan was enthroned in the Vatican prior to the Second Vatican Council. For a brief introduction, Father Martin was an exorcist and a polyglot who spoke 10 languages. He was at times able to see demons, and he read the third secret of Fatima in 1959. Father Malachi Martin was also the chief aide to Cardinal Augustine B., a German cardinal who was an important figure during the Second Vatican Council and served as Pope Pius XII's personal confessor. Father Malachi Martin once said that an enthronement of Satan took place in the Vatican sometime between 1959 and 1963, significantly weakening the Church. In 1959, Cardinal Augustine B. showed Father Martin the third secret of Fatima under the condition that he took a pontifical oath of secrecy. Cardinal B. was very angry that Pope John XXIII had decided not to reveal the third secret of Fatima to the public in 1960, as Our Lady had instructed. Those fools have just condemned millions upon millions of people to death, Cardinal B. told Father Martin in 1959. Father Martin said the closest that a pontiff has ever come to actually talking about the third secret was when Pope John Paul II gave an interview to a German magazine in which he said, in order to prevent the worldwide power of communism from undertaking certain moves against the West, my predecessors in the See of Peter have diplomatically referred to withholding publication of the message. Pope John the 23rd directly defied the Mother of God so that he could have 2 KGB agents in clerical robes attend his presence during the Second Vatican Council. Martin was referring to the Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox patriarchs who were reportedly KGB agents. Father Martin left the Jesuits in 1964 because he saw that they were being transformed by false liberation theology in which Jesus was not the divine Son of God, but the ultimate revolutionary, and it was to Catholicize revolutionary salvation, which meant the establishment of a society based on equity of social justice in Marxist terms. And he saw that the Jesuits had fallen for that hook, line, and sinker, which is one of the reasons why he left. Father Martin made many enemies within the church because he said the quiet part out loud and actually named names. Father Martin once said, and I quote, "I'm naming names because when I appear before the judgment seat of the Lord Jesus, he is going to ask me, Malachi, you had the opportunity to concretely do something. You didn't tell me, Malachi, do you deserve to come home now?" And Malachi was quite adamant about it. So, he said, and that's why I named names.
Holy mackerels.
Pope to hold press conference on aliens and supernatural by Adam Kaler. Thanks, Adam. The Vatican has announced that it is set to hold a press conference on supernatural phenomena, and will touch on aliens and how it will deal with potential encounters in the future. The move to hold the press conference has caused ripples in the alien community, as one like this hasn't been held since February of 1978. However, according to the National Catholic Reporter, it is being done so after a surge in reporting of aliens and supernatural phenomena from mainstream media. Cardinal Franjo Sepper explained how the move made by the Pope and his officials is necessary. He said, "Moreover, the ease of going from one place to another fosters frequent pilgrimages, so that ecclesiastical authorities should discern quickly about the merits of such matters." The press conference will see new guidelines launched on how the Vatican will deal with aliens and phenomena created by them, or alleged aliens, etc. Until now, pretty much everything has been dismissed by the Pope and his investigative team, so it remains to be seen what the new document will do in terms of being more open to it. However, Pope Francis did touch on aliens at the end of last year when he was talking about how early Christians discussed associating with Jews and Gentiles, which, for some reason, he compared to aliens. He said, "That was unthinkable. If, for example, tomorrow an expedition of Martians came, and for some of them came to us here, Martians, right? Green, with that long nose and big ears, just like children paint them, and one says, 'But I want to be baptized,' what would happen?" He didn't answer that question, but he added, "It was never the ministry of the closed door. Never." So they're setting it all up for Project Bluebeam and the fake alien invasion for when the rapture occurs. What the Vatican knows about aliens and why UFO cover-up won't go away for the Pope by Adam Kaler. Thanks, Adam. For decades, the truth about the Vatican's relationship with aliens has been kept hidden from the public, with officials refusing to comment on it. Speculation has been running riot about what lies beneath the Vatican's walls, with rumors of alien cover-ups and evidence being kept inside its vaults ramping up in recent years. But the pressure on the Vatican to front up to the claims ramped up last year, thanks to a whistleblower. David Grush is a U.S. Air Force veteran and has often made claims about the U.S. government's involvement covering up the truth about aliens and UFOs. However, last year he brought the Vatican into the fold by claiming that it knows about aliens and was involved in a cover-up as far back as 1933. He said, 1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle, and the Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy until about 1944 to 1945. The Pope back-channeled that and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it. He was then asked by News Nation to clarify whether or not the Catholic Church was aware of non-human existence on Earth, to which he replied, "Certainly," and when asked why he should be believed, he said, "I have the credentials and I was an intelligence officer." But when probed about the claims, the Vatican refused to respond, and has yet to do so to this very day. It has often been claimed that if the Vatican were to open its vault doors and be honest about what it knows, it could do irreparable damage to itself. I hate to say it, but we are woefully out of time for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Jimmy Haunted. Thank you, Paul Chadwick. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless you.